Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Radical Disruption. Today's podcast guest is the one, the only Brock Johnson. To know him is to love him. Brock Johnson has coached thousands of entrepreneurs and creators on how to grow on Instagram since launching his coaching business in 2018. In 2021, his personal following blew up thanks to real strategies and has grown at a rate of approximately 1,000 followers per day since then. He now has over 700,000 followers, personally consults with Meta and Instagram staff, and is an international keynote speaker. In this episode, we talk about paid versus organic content strategies, hiring team members, money mindset, and so much more. Let's dive into the episode. Hello and welcome back to the show. I'm so excited for today's guest. I have Brock here with me, and I'm just going to turn it straight over to you, Brock, to tell us a little bit more about your entrepreneurship story. So, how did you get started, and how did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, well, I'm so excited to be here today and so thankful that you had me on the show. If I'm to give like my it's not quite the elevator pitch. Maybe it's the elevator pitch if we're going to like the 90th floor. But the quick overview of how I got started and how I got to where I am today is I was raised in a very entrepreneurial family. So while a lot of people were raised by their parents telling them, you got to go to college, you got to get a degree, become a doctor, a lawyer, nurse, whatever. My parents were entrepreneurs their whole lives, and they worked together with my mom as the CEO and my dad as the CFO. So that was always what was preached to me. And that's always what I saw mainly. And through monkey see, monkey do, I wanted to be like my parents, as most little kids do. And I wanted to become an entrepreneur. And so as a child growing up, I was always starting little businesses. And I should really put businesses in air quotes because they were like a step above a lemonade stand. Like they weren't real businesses, but I was doing little things like that. And my parents would support me. And I'd do it for a month or two. And then I'd get bored and go back to doing other children, kid things. And then eventually, when I was a freshman in college, I was a student athlete. And as a student athlete, I didn't have the free time to work a typical job. Like I couldn't just go get a 9 to 5 job. I had so many hours of my day taken up between sports and school. And so I knew that the only way I was going to be able to provide for myself was by creating my own business.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be able to provide for myself because my main drive was I wanted to become financially independent from my parents.
Yeah.
I had a super lucky childhood, super fortunate, blessed childhood, and I didn't want that silver spoon in my mouth anymore.
Yeah.
And I wanted to provide for myself and cut the financial umbilical cord, so to speak. That was one motivating factor. And then another one is I just wanted to be able to provide for like my friends. At the time, I didn't have a family. I was 19 years old. I had a family, but I didn't live with my family. I was a college student, but I wanted to be able to take my friends to the movies or go out to dinner, go out to eat, and not just live off ramen noodles in college. And so that first business that I started was a course. I sold it for about 20 bucks and I was teaching moms how to keep their kids safe on Snapchat. So that was like my
Oh,
first step into business. And there are like elements of it that are still similar to what I'm doing today. It was a course. And a lot of what I'm doing today revolves around course creation. It was a similar demographic in that I was selling to people who were maybe 10 years my senior, 15, maybe 20 years my senior at that point when I was on social media, right? Because I was on Snapchat. But it was very different, obviously, than what I'm doing now. But that was kind of how it got started. And then it's grown and evolved very organically since then.
I have a question on Snapchat. Where did that come from? Because for
Yeah.
me, listening to your story, I'm like, that was like so random, but I'm sure it
Yeah.
wasn't random. So, what was like, where did that come from? Where did the idea come from? And then, how were you like, oh, I'm going to create a course around this?
Yeah, great question. And it made sense at the time, I should
Yeah.
say, because at the time, again, I was a freshman in college and I was going to school across the country. So I was born and raised in California. I was going to school on the East Coast
Mhm.
and Snapchat was really popular at that time, as I guess it still is today. I don't use it as much today, but still popular with that demographic. And I told my parents, hey, I'm at this cool university. I'm going to school on the other side of the country. I want to keep in touch with you and I want to show you like, hey, here's this really cool building. Here's this cool thing that I'm doing, whatever. But I don't
Mhm.
want to text you all day. So
Yeah.
I'll just snap you. I'll send you snaps and videos and little pictures on Snapchat. And that's how I'll keep in touch with you guys throughout
Yeah.
the day. And so I taught my parents how to use Snapchat. And so then I knew I had the skill. I knew I could teach someone who was double my age how to use Snapchat and understand it. So
Yeah.
that was the first thing is I had that skill. But then the second thing is all over the news that summer was 2 things. One was Pokemon Go, and the second was Snapchat, and everyone was so scared of Snapchat. It was in the same way that, like, people are scared of TikTok nowadays. They
Yeah.
were scared of Snapchat, but even more so because there was, like, disappearing messages and
Yeah.
bad stuff happening on there. Moms especially were really scared of what are my teens doing. And so while I wasn't a parent, I figured, hey, if I could at least teach you how to use the app and then give you my perspective as a kid using the app and as a kid who never did anything sketchy or illegal on the app and had parents who like monitored in what I thought was a very healthy way. Here's what I can share. And so that's how I like created the app. And I saw there was a market for it because it was all over the news and it was what everyone was talking about that year. And so that's where I saw the market and I saw that I could fill that gap in the market. And that's what led me to create the course.
I love that. And I love that you had a unique selling point too. It wasn't like, hey, I'm a parent and this is how I'm using it. It's actually not to say that you were a kid at the time, but like you had a different perspective
Yeah.
than a lot of those parents. And I think that's your brain was probably thinking very similarly to how their children were going to be utilizing the app. And I love that that
Mhm.
was like, you use that as like your superpower instead of being like, oh, well, actually, this discredits me because I don't
Yeah.
have kids. But it's like, actually, I have a unique position and perspective that I can share with people. So I love that. Something
Thank you.
else that I would be so interested to know, because you grew up with parents that were very entrepreneurial, still are very entrepreneurial, is money mindset. And I think that a huge thing for entrepreneurs that holds them back is their money mindset and their belief around the ability to achieve the things that they want to achieve, and also their belief around like be like them believing that like they're worthy of that. I would be
Mhm.
so interested to know from you, because you did grow up with parents who are very entrepreneurial, which is something that a lot of people can't relate to, but I would love to know like how that affected your money mindset and how that contributed to your success.
Yeah, this is really such a great question, and I think it's so essential for entrepreneurship and content creation and making money online. Because you and I both can give a million strategies and tips and recommendations and advice, but ultimately, I feel like it's the people who can really have the right mindset who are going to have the most success. If you take
Yeah.
two people, they're using the exact same strategies, but one has the better quotes, air quotes, money mindset or growth mindset, whatever,
Yeah.
they're going to have more long-term success. So I love this question. Growing up, my parents did a lot of things very strategically in terms of developing my sister and I's money mindset. And so we were never sat down at the dinner table and taught about entrepreneurship. We never were attending lectures and learning about entrepreneurship or learning about having the right money mindset. It was very much just instilled in us. And my parents like to say that they did a little bit of brainwashing to get us to this point where we did have an abundance mindset and a growth mindset and a very healthy money mindset. Where one thing I can share specifically that I know my parents did is there was never the phrase of, oh, we can't afford that, or
Mhm.
oh, that's too expensive, or that's too much money. If there was ever something that I wanted to buy, and let's say I was going to use my own money to buy it, and I had $20 in my little duct tape wallet, but I couldn't afford the Lego set, instead of my mom being like, oh, no, you're too broke, or oh, no, you can't afford that, it would immediately be, let's figure out a way that you can afford that. Let's figure out a way that you can make the money to make that possible. And so that was like one thing that my parents were really strategic about. And so now everything, like literally yesterday, my wife and I were renovating our house right now. And thankfully, this didn't end up being the case. But for about an hour or two yesterday morning, we thought there was a leak underneath our house. And we were like going to have to rip up all of the foundation and jackhammer the whole house apart. And living in a place where it gets cold, like the pipes are 6 feet below the ground. It's not like in California where the
Yeah.
pipes are 6 inches below the ground. Like it's a much bigger endeavor. And my brain immediately went to like, okay, yeah, this is going to be really expensive and it sucks that this is happening, but we'll be all right. We'll figure out a way to make it work. We'll figure out a way to pay for these expenses. Thankfully, the house didn't flood and thankfully there wasn't the leak as bad as we thought it was. But I think just like having that mindset that everything is figure outable is absolutely huge. And it was really instilled in me from a really young age from my parents.
I love that. And you can only create what you believe that you're capable of. And so that mindset around if there's a will, there's a way is so,
Yeah.
so, so powerful. And people always say success is 80% your mindset and 20% strategy. But I think a lot of people leave it at that. They're just like, oh, yeah, 80% mindset. And people are like, oh, yeah, 80% mindset. But we never actually talk about what that actually means. So I love that
Yeah.
you dove a little bit deeper into that. And I think it's really easy, when we talk about our entrepreneurship journey and someone like you who has had massive, massive success, to look at you and be like, well, of course it's easy for you to have a positive money mindset, because you've had such massive success. But I know that you have also been through times where sales haven't been, what you wanted them to be, where you've been through challenges and trials. What advice would you give to someone who is listening to this right now and they're like, that's amazing. And like, I have goals. I'm not seeing that come to fruition right now. Like, I'm not seeing the sales. So like, how can I have a positive money mindset?
Yeah, I think that there's a funny distinction there between what you can control and what you can't control. And I think that you can recognize, on one hand, that things are not going the way you wanted. You're not hitting the goals you wanted. You're not making the sales you wanted. You're not achieving the success that you wanted. And it's also okay to be frustrated. Those feelings are valid. You can be frustrated and upset and overwhelmed and dejected and depressed. Though that's all okay. But then I'm a big fan of like, okay, so then what are you going to do about it? Because that's what you can control. You can control your actions, you can control your effort, you can control the strategies that you're using and your output. You can't control the results. So I'm always a big fan of detaching from the result, which really, really, really is tough to do. It's tough to do in sports because sports are all about the score and the
Yeah.
win loss. And it's really tough to do in business because business is all about how much money have you made? How many customers do you have? How many followers do you have? But the more you can detach from those results and just really fall in love with the process, not just focus on the process, but fall
Yeah.
in love with the process and find joy in the process, that's huge for me. The more I focus on how many views did this video get, how many sales did I get in this launch, the more it's going to suck and the more it's going to be a challenge. Compare that to when I'm like, hey, maybe this challenge didn't go as well as I thought as I wanted it to. Maybe we didn't reach our goals of total opt-ins, but let's go back to the process. Like, what areas of the process can be improved? What areas of the marketing, of the sales page, of the checkout process can be improved? And falling in love with that. Like, that's, I think, really what makes a great marketer is they're just obsessed with fine tuning and falling in love with and finding joy in the process.
Yeah, it's about who you become, not about what you achieve. So for you, when you're like, hey, sales are down, let's just say not specifically that we're like in a launch, but just generally that your sales aren't where you want them to be and you're not quite hitting that mark. Obviously that perspective shift is really, really important. But what are some like
Mhm.
tactical things that you go to when sales are just not where you want them to be? Like when they're slow, do you have a list of, hey, I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna do this, this, and this? Like what are some of those like tangible strategies?
Yeah. So first, I always like to, before I dive into what I might be doing wrong or what might I be able to change in my process, I'm going to zoom out and just look at like the meta environment of the world right now. Is it summer? Is it a year where we're coming off of 3 years of being locked in our houses and everyone's growing super fast on social media? And now everyone's back out in the world.
Yeah.
Is there like something smaller like the Olympics going on? And so everyone's paying attention to the Olympics and people are spending less time and money on social media?
Yeah.
Is it the opposite of that? Is it the holiday season and people are spending a lot? Or is it right after the holiday season and people have no money left because they just spent all their money in November and December? It's just like being aware of the meta environment and how everyone else is doing is important. And sometimes you might not always be able to know. But I think that's why building real, genuine relationships within your industry, within your space is important
Yeah.
because you look at social media and everyone's got their highlight reel and everyone's got their wins and successes. But when you actually form real relationships within your community and you have real conversations with people, then it's like, oh, yeah, hey, this summer sucked for me. Or, hey, yeah, 2024 has been tougher than 2023.
Yeah.
And you just get a much better realistic expectation for where you should be at. But if it's, let's say, it should be a season where everyone else is doing great and you're the one person who isn't quite hitting your goals, then I'm going to first look at the frequency of my output. So, like
Mhm.
the frequency of my marketing, whether it's ads or my organic social. Am I posting about that offer, that promotion, that sale as often as I have in the past? or
Yeah.
have my numbers just dropped, because sometimes we don't even realize that we dropped from 4 promotional posts a week to 2, and that might seem like, "Oh, that's not that big of a difference," but that's 50% less. Like, you just cut your numbers in half. So I'll look at the frequency first. If the frequency is the same, then I'll go back to the actual posts and I'll look through the hook and I'll look at the messaging and the way I'm creating the post and the call to action. But my bread and butter is reposting. So if I'm ever like, hey, leads have been down for the last couple of weeks, I'm going to go back to a few months ago and find my best lead gen post that I've made, find the post that got way more comments, which are really many chat triggers. I'm going to post that again. I literally did that this morning because I know last week, I don't think I posted any promotional things for our business on my feed. And so I
Yeah.
was like, this week, I'm definitely going to go back and take one of my best promo posts from, I think, February and post it again, because I know that'll hit. I know it'll get a nice boost and it will help make up for my lack of frequency a week ago.
I love that. You talked about lead generation posts. Can you expand a little bit on how do you know which posts are generating leads? Because I think it's one thing to be like, oh, yeah, like this post is bringing in leads, but how do you actually track that?
Mhm.
And how do you actually track not just leads, but how many people turned into sales?
Yeah, so I do very little direct selling on my social. I do very little promotion of paid offers, is I
Yeah.
guess another way to say that. So even though the offers that we have within our business aren't very high ticket, like even our most expensive offer of the Insta Club Hub is like an annual membership of $299 a year.
Mhm.
Compare that to other people who are selling thousands of dollars of courses and stuff like that. That's a much lower ticket. But
Yeah.
even that, we don't promote that organically. We don't really run ads to that. I don't talk about that. Not because there's anything wrong with that, but just because we see much better results within our business of driving people to a lead magnet that's totally free, or at most it's maybe like $10,
Yeah.
and getting them onto our email list. So every
Mhm.
single week we're adding, I want to say roughly maybe 8 to 10,000 people to our email list every week, either through organic or through ads. And so the majority of my posts and all of our ads that we're running are just driving people to a new freemium, to a new lead magnet. And
Yeah.
I think we now have about 30 different lead magnets in the business that we offer. And they're PDFs, they're guides, they're quick playlists, they're checklists, they're digital downloads that people can use for like quick wins and quick benefits and quick
Yeah.
knowledge. But then we have their email, they're on our email list, and then it's a matter of our copywriting and our email marketing that will actually convert them to a trial or maybe even to a full customer.
I love that. When they are added onto your email list, are they put into a funnel or are they added directly into your newsletter? And if it is a funnel, what does that look like?
Yeah, so it's a full funnel. We're on like the sixth iteration of the funnel now. Sixth, and when I say iteration, like the sixth total revamp, redesign, different like schedules and frequencies. For a few months, we were testing out a frequency that had been recommended to us by a colleague that was kind of, I guess you could think of it as a super aggressive email funnel where they weren't just getting one email a day, they were getting multiple emails a day. And as long
Oh,
as they continue to open and as long as they continue to engage with those emails, they were going to continue to get that really high frequency. And listen, it might work for some people. We tested it out for a few months and it didn't work. It drove up our number of unsubscribes, it drove up our number of complaints, which is a huge problem in email marketing. And we just found like our audience, for whatever reason, maybe our offer, maybe our marketing, whatever, just wasn't right for that like hyper frequency. So
yeah.
our current funnel is a 30-day funnel. It might be a little bit more than 30 days, but it's roughly 30 days long. And for the first few days, like the first week or so of the funnel, they're getting pretty much one email a day. And some of those emails are storytelling, some of those emails are adding value, just giving free tips. Some are doing more of a sales pitch. And
Mhm.
then over the following second, third, and fourth week, it kind of tapers off and slows down to maybe 2 or 3 emails a week. By the end, maybe only just 1 or 2 emails a week. But admittedly, and I want to say this because I think it's important to know, is within the Insta Club Hub, we have 25 team members.
Yeah.
I say team because some of them are staff, some of them are full time, some of them are contractors. But we have someone whose full time job is writing our email copy. So I haven't even seen all of the emails. I haven't read through all of the emails in the funnel number 6, and I don't know the exact frequency in which they're being sent out.
Yeah.
We have built the business to a stage where I don't have to touch that. That's not my area of expertise. I
Yeah.
can share what we're doing, but I don't have to focus on that. And so I think that's important to say, just because I know there might be someone listening like, oh my gosh, a funnel that's 30 days long and has all these automations and all these different emails that are going out. That sounds daunting. Yeah, if I had to build that myself solo, that would be very daunting.
Yeah.
There's a reason why, like, my personal email list, which is very small, is I send out an email a week. And it's more like my super close knit, super fan community who I send out one email that I write every week. And there's no funnel. But our actual business email list is much bigger and much more robust and has much more systems in place for that funnel.
No, I love that. And I appreciate the transparency too for two reasons. Number one, because that's not something that we often talk about like on the forefront of our business, just because I would say what that's not what's going to help us to build our business. But obviously it's really important. But for the second reason too, because a lot of people will look at a business like yours and they're like, okay, well, Brock's massively successful. So I'm just going to copy his strategies. And then they're like, this is not sustainable, but it's behind the scenes. It's not just you. There's, 25, however many other people out there who are helping support you and you've built your business to this place. And it's like when you started on day one, it didn't look like what it looks like right now. And I think that
Exactly.
that's something that's so hard for people to comprehend sometimes when we look at social media and we look at your Instagram account and we see your face and you have a personal brand for sure, but it's like there's so much going on behind the scenes that we don't know. And like your business has evolved so much from day one to however many years you are now into business. So I appreciate that transparency.
Of
Something
course.
that really caught my attention was you said you have 30 different variations of freebies. Can you
Mhm.
talk a little bit about why you have so many different variations and what is the strategy behind like swapping those in and out? Are those all actively being promoted? Or those you're swapping them out when they become less effective? What is that?
Yeah, basically exactly what you just said right there is as they become less effective, we will promote them less often. So usually in ads, we're only running ads to maybe 5 or at most not even 10, maybe 5 to 7 of the freemiums at a time. And as we see that 1 or 2 start to become more successful or have a lower customer acquisition cost, we will put more ad spend to those. And then from an organic perspective, I like to have a ton because I know that if I'm promoting the exact same freebie every single day,
Yeah.
a certain amount of people have seen it already. A certain amount of people have downloaded it already. And then they're less likely to engage with that post. They're less likely to interact with my profile, which means they're less likely to see my next post. So I'm constantly swapping out the freebies that I am using. And even though we have 30, I probably only promote maybe 10 on my socials. And sometimes I'll go a month or 2 months without promoting one of them because admittedly, maybe I just forgot, or probably more than likely, it just wasn't a super highly sought after freebie. But all those freebies to come up with them, I'm basically just looking at what people say they want.
Yeah.
Because what people say they want is huge. And oftentimes, as business owners, we're giving people what we think they want or what we want them to want or what we know as the business owner, as the expert, what we know they need,
Yeah.
but that might not be what they want. So, for example, in you and I's industry, people might really want a viral hook idea. They
Yeah.
might like, oh my gosh, I need to know what hooks are going to make me go viral. And so we can create a freemium that will give you a list of hook ideas.
Yeah.
And that's what people say they want. That's what they will give us their email for to get on our email list. But you and I both know that just some viral hook, whatever, at the beginning of your reel, that's not going to make or break your business.
Yeah.
But there's this strategy called the chocolate covered carrot, where you have to entice them in with the thing that they think they want, the thing that
Mhm.
they say they want, the chocolate. And then once they take the bite, they realize, oh, it's actually something more than that, that's deeper, that's actually going to be good for me. And it's actually going to give me the success that I've been craving. But we just had to bring them into the business through a different means. So that's how we come up with our freemiums. And again, we've gotten to 30 over the course of years. There was a long time there where we had 2 or 3, and it's just grown and grown and grown since then.
I love that. And when you are listening to people tell you what they want, where are you usually like finding those ideas? Is that your comment section, your Q&A boxes?
Yeah, yeah. It's all of the above. It's my comment section, it's the Q&A boxes. I've been loving my broadcast channel for that sort of stuff, putting polls in the broadcast channel because it's sent to people as if it's a DM.
Yeah.
People just open it so fast and they engage so quickly. It's funny, like with some of my, if I'm comparing like some of the messages I've been sending in my broadcast channels to just some of the straight up reels I've been posting on my feed, a lot of times the messages in the broadcast channels will get more views and more engagement in that first hour than the reel, which is crazy to think about. But it's a different sort of follower. It's a more engaged follower, and it's a just another way to get in front of them and get their feedback. So I like to vary it up a little bit. Sometimes I'll just send out an email to my smaller personal list and just ask a question. Like it'll literally be a one sentence email asking a question, asking them to reply to the email. But with all that being said, I know not everyone listening has a large audience that they can tap on and get polls from and get feedback from. So what I would say to that person is go to the leaders in your industry and just read through their comment section. Like I promise, if there's someone listening to this and they are a new Instagram coach and they're just getting started and they don't know what to create, go to my comment section, go to your comment section and just read what people are saying. Read the questions. Message someone and reply to them, be like, "Hey, you should follow me for this free tip." Don't do that like sleazy thing,
Yeah.
but read through the comments and see what problems are people having, what question is coming up time and time again, and that will give you a great clue as to what people are thinking and what people are struggling with.
I love that. Great market research tool. Definitely don't go out and comment and reply and be like, hey, come follow me or anything like that. Obviously, take the time to build your own audience, but it is a really great marketing tool. And I definitely did that when I very first started because, again, you don't have the comments, the engagement. I oftentimes have people who are like, I'm getting literally no comments. No one's responding to my question boxes. I'm like, we've all been there. We've all been there. So it's not you, but there are opportunities out there for you to still find that data to help you to grow, which is really, really awesome. Something that you've talked a lot about is paid versus organic content. And I would be really curious to hear a little bit more about how you integrate ads into ads and your organic content into your overall marketing strategy. And then a follow-up question to that would be what percentage of your leads and sales comes from paid versus organic content?
Yeah, great question. So I'll start with the second question, which is that the majority of our leads and our customers still come from organic. We are spending tens of thousands of dollars every month on ads. Just to give people like a perspective of where we're at, we do have a full-time ads manager and he is in-house. It's his job it's called a media buyer. That's like the technical term for it. I've never
Yeah.
really understood that term, but whatever. That's the name they use. Basically for the person who runs the ads, and he doesn't create the designs, but he will tell the designers or he'll tell the editors how to edit my videos, or he'll tell me like, hey, we want to talk about this freemium and here's the kind of script that we see as working recently, so try this out. And so I would still say the majority of our leads and customers come from organic, but we are spending a lot on ads. What I would say in terms of advertising is I'm a big fan of it, but only if you know how to make organic content that converts.
Yeah.
Because if you can't make good organic content that converts, then paying money for more people to see your bad content is just a waste of money. It's throwing money into the dumpster fire and it's just not going to be worth it. It's not going to see results. But if you get your business to the point where you are net positive, you're in the black, you're making money, then you can start testing out ads, and you can either hire someone to do it for you, or there's plenty of great courses out there. And even I'm sure plenty of free YouTube videos and podcasts that will kind of walk you through the basics of ads. But then it just becomes a math game. Like, how
Mhm.
much does it cost for you to get a customer? And how much are you making from said customer? And can you live off those margins? If it costs $30 for your product and it costs you $25 to get a customer, you're making $5 on every ad that you are spending. So you might as well pump as much income as you can, as much revenue as you can back into those ads, as long as it continues to scale and grow. And as long as those margins continue to stay the same,
Yeah.
mathematically, it makes sense. So that's my viewpoint on ads. That's why we run ads. I'm not an expert in advertising, so I don't ever teach about it. I really focus on that first part of just like improving your organic content, but it's definitely a part of our strategy as a business as a whole.
I love that. Are you running ads mainly to your freemiums or to directly into offers?
Almost all of our ads are into freemiums, and we just see better results that way, lower customer acquisition costs that way. Yeah, so that's usually what works for us. I want to say we do run ads to our trial. So we have a $7 trial, which is super, super low ticket. Like it's almost as low as you can get without being a freemium. So we do run ads to that. And usually what we find is most effective is when we run ads to the trial, there's a bundle of freemiums that will come with the trial. So
Yeah,
they won't just get everything that's included in the trial. They're also getting 2 or 3 freemiums included. And so that's usually enough to entice people to take out their credit card and put down the $7 trial.
I love that. At what point in your business specifically, and I know that there's no perfect answer of when you should start paid ads, but for you specifically, when did you start integrating paid advertising into your strategy?
So with the Insta Club Hub, we've been doing ads since day one. The Insta Club Hub was really founded as a business that was going to be kind of like it is today. It was a business that from day one had probably 5 to 10 team members. Of course,
Mhm.
it's grown a huge amount since then, but from day one, there was a team involved. From day
Yeah,
one, it wasn't just me. Back from 2016 to 2020, which 2020 is when we launched the club. But for those first 4 years, when I was pretty much a solo entrepreneur, I had an editor who did like freelance editing. I had a designer who would help me here or there because I suck at graphic design. I had an assistant who would help me respond to my emails and stuff. But I was much more solo than I am now. I wasn't married to my wife, who's now our CFO. Like I was doing all that myself, which
yeah,
thank the Lord I'm not doing that anymore. Because if I suck at anything, it's the CFO stuff and the organization and the numbers. But, anyways, all that to say, when I was a solo entrepreneur, solo adjacent, I
yeah,
wasn't running ads.
yeah.
So, for those first 4 years where I had 4 different courses. I had one-on-one coaching. I did public speaking. I did podcasts. I did live trainings virtually. That was all me. There was no ads there. It was all organic. And the business was continuing to grow. But it was once we added more team members in that we really saw the business reach a new level.
I love that. You talk a lot about hiring, and I know this is pivoting the conversation. We talked about your wife is your CFO, and when you started your business, you were already hiring out. You obviously have a huge team now. There's what I have found with entrepreneurs, there's a big block around hiring where they're like, I don't want to hire, like, it's scary. I don't know if I can, support someone on my team. What would you say to that person who hasn't hired that first person, but they're looking for support because they've made it to that point in their business where they're like,
Yeah.
I am like at max capacity?
Yeah. So first, I would say read the book or listen to the book, Who Not How.
Mm,
Great book. And the thesis of the book is essentially when we set these big goals, we often ask ourselves, how am I going to get there? And instead, we should ask ourselves, who is going to help me get there? Because it's truly that who that is going to be the difference maker in your success. What I will say is when you first start hiring someone, make it as low pressure and low commitment as you possibly can. So when you hire someone, don't hire someone as a full-time employee who you have to do like all of the W-9 stuff and healthcare benefits and retirement, and they're having like a pay stub every 2 weeks. Instead, hire someone as a contractor, which is something that more and more people are doing. Like the whole term gig economy is people working on these little gigs. So hire someone as a contractor to do work for you on a trial basis and be very upfront and honest with them through this entire hiring process. Is this is something that could turn into full-time employment, or this is something that could turn into a long-term partnership.
yeah,
But for right now, I want to work together for a month to see if it's a good fit for both of us. I want you to see if you like working with me. I want to see if I like working with you. And it might even, and I think that there's like some taboo-ness around this, but it might be more cost effective and beneficial for you to hire outside of the US when you're first getting started.
yeah,
And I say that because there are so many entrepreneurs out there who have the potential to have a massive business and to hire dozens of people, hundreds of people in the US and create jobs within the US, but they might never get to that stage if they're always a solo entrepreneur and they're always trying to do it themselves. So it's totally okay when you're first getting started to hire someone outside of the US who their cost of living is significantly different than it is here in the US. Their minimum wage, what might be our minimum wage here in the US, and you're like, "Oh my gosh, I don't know what the federal minimum wage is, $7.50 an hour, but I live in California, all right, live in Utah now, but we're staying in California. California minimum wage is like $18 or $20, something super high. Cut that in half. No one in California could live off $10 a month or $10 an hour. But there might be other countries in the world where, based off the exchange rate, based off of their cost of living, $10 an hour would make them upper middle class and would make them the highest earner in their family in generations.
Yeah,
And so through hiring that person, you're helping them out. You are allowing them to earn a living and provide for their family. And you're able to then grow the business to the point where you can hire in the US and you can hire more experienced or more professional talent or more expensive talent here in the US. So I think just read the book Who Not How and then start with the lowest pressure scenario that you can.
I love that. How do you find people to hire?
Yeah. This has definitely changed a lot over the years. When I first got started, my first ever team member, I found her on what was called, I don't even know if it's still around anymore, onlinejobs.ph, PH for the Philippines. She's still with us today, which like usually brings a tear to my eye every time I talk about it because here we are 7, 8 years later and she's still with our team today. No way in the same role. When she was first hired, she was like my quote unquote assistant and I had to figure out things to have her do. Now she's in a totally different role. She is managing a few of our social accounts, really working a lot more with my mom than myself. But onlinejobs.ph, freelancer and Upwork are good ways to find people. Fiverr is usually a very cheap option. You're going to get what you pay for on Fiverr, but if it's just your first opportunity of dipping your toe in the water of hiring someone, Fiverr can be a great place to start. Now, I know this isn't the most helpful answer. Now I find most of our team, our staff from social media. Either they're following me and they've been interacting with me, or I'll put out like a help wanted ad and then I'll ask people to either apply or send it to someone who might want to apply.
Yeah.
But even if you don't have a huge social media following, even if you just poke around on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube and TikTok and search for what you're looking for, you might find a few people who fit the bill and you can watch some of their content and get a feel for what they're like before you even have an interview or before you even reached out or explore hiring that person. So social media can be a really helpful way to find people.
Yeah, no, I love that. My very first hire was from a referral, but I was following someone else on social media and they had posted on their Instagram stories how much they loved working with this person. And I
Mhm.
started following her and then that led to my first hire. But then my second and my third hire was actually from my community. So I posted on my Instagram stories with a form and I was like, hey, I'm looking to hire, fill out this form.
Yeah.
And then I think my fourth and fifth hire was also from a referral from a friend. So like talking with other people and reaching out and being like, hey, do you have anyone that you would recommend is also something that's really powerful. But I will say that it's also really powerful to pull people from your own community, depending on what their role is, just because they already know
Yes.
your brand. They're already familiar with it. They already are connected to you. So I think that there's a lot of power in utilizing your network. And I think you'd also be surprised too by how many people are in your network. And maybe they don't, maybe someone who's following you isn't directly what you're looking for, but maybe they know someone who would be and they could refer them to you. So definitely utilizing your community. My last question for you on hiring is how do you find, like, how do you know who to hire? So you've talked about you've hired CFO, you've hired people for email. Like, how do you know, especially that very first hire, like, how do you know who you need to be stepping into a certain role? Do you need someone who's in email marketing? Do you need someone who's a social media manager? Do you need someone who is an assistant? Like, how do you know, especially for that first hire, what role they need to play?
Yeah, yeah, this is such a good question. My wheels are turning with so many different ways that I can go with this answer. So I hope that these trains don't leave the station before I can speak them. Who do you hire first or how do you know who to hire? I like to look at like what do you hate doing but that you have to do? Like
Mm,
what areas of your business or even your life do you hate doing but you have to do? One example was early on in college, I did not like cleaning the house. And I lived in an apartment with three other college football players. So you can imagine what that house looked like. And to our credit, it was actually much cleaner when we lived there than when we took it over. But it wasn't great, right? It was dirty and messy. But
yeah,
I also knew that I like a clean environment. I'm not a dirty, sloppy guy. I like a clean environment. And
yeah,
with that being said, I didn't want to spend all day cleaning the house, especially because it could get a little gross with a couple dudes in the house. And I also knew, like we talked about earlier, I was really busy with books and ball. And then you add business on top of that. I just didn't have the time. And so when I was in college, I had someone come every other week and clean our house for an hour. That's a form of outsourcing. And I think people
yeah,
oftentimes have a misconception that outsourcing has to be hiring someone specifically for your business, but it doesn't. It can be having someone come over and help with the laundry. It can be your gardeners. That is a form of outsourcing. Having someone take your dogs for a walk or groom your dogs, like mobile pet grooming, that's a form of outsourcing because that saves you time that you would otherwise spend. So just find the things, and this is what I did early on, find the things that I had to do, but I hated doing, or find the things that I had to do that I sucked at. Maybe I didn't hate it, but I just wasn't very good at it. And I didn't want to take the hours to learn how to do the skills myself. I would instead rather put the skills I already have to practice and stay in my zone of genius. So that's kind of like how you figure out what role. I also think before you hire certain people, now getting into the specific personalities, and you have 5 candidates, which one do you hire? I think it's important for you to do the role yourself for at
Mhm.
least a short period of time. Put yourself in the shoes quite literally, where you can figure out, okay, the person who's in this role needs to be able to juggle 8 balls at once. The
Yeah.
person in this role needs to be super type A, or the opposite. The person who's in this role needs to be super creative. The
Yeah.
person in this role needs to be just a soldier. They're going to take orders. They're going to execute. If they're told to do something at 5 p.m. every day, they're going to do it at 5 p.m. Or they're the person who's going to be the leader and they have to be able to talk to different people in different ways.
Yeah.
And you'll learn that much faster by doing the thing yourself first. So I found that very helpful in hiring. And then the final thing that I'll say is, I think this is all the trains. I don't think any of them left the station. The final thing I'll say is that you hire the person and then you train the position. So I'm a
Mhm.
big fan of hiring someone who is going to be a good fit within our culture, within our team. And to your point about hiring people within your community or who follow you or via recommendation, is those people are oftentimes going to already be the right fit. They're going to have the same values or beliefs or ethics or morals, the same energy and enthusiasm. And then you can train them to do the specific tasks you need done, but that attitude is so essential when you're first getting started. There are so many people in our business who they're in like their sixth different role. Like they've changed role, changed position, but they've been with us for 15 or 20 years because we want to keep them around because they're just that great of a fit for the organization and that important for the culture. And then there are people who are much more highly qualified who come in, they work with us for 6 months, and it's just like, oh, this person, they might have some skills in this field, but they're just not a good fit.
Yeah.
They're bad for morale or they're bad for the business. And so they don't end up sticking around. They don't end up making it.
I love that. And I just have to commend you for looking at things that you're like, hey, I'm not good at this, or this isn't my area of expertise, or I don't like doing this, and just being like, hey, I'm going to delegate this out. And knowing too that, like, the more that you can stay in your creative zone of genius and like what you're good at, that's actually what's going to help you to scale the most. And so I just commend you for that. It's so amazing to be looking at you and your journey. And I know it didn't happen all at once. You didn't grow to a team of 25 in your first year, but like over time, like it was you thinking about staying in your zone of genius, but also too, I think that that's allowed you probably to have a lot of freedom because
Yeah.
you're not managing all these different tasks and you've been able to delegate off. And ultimately there's a lot of different ways to scale your business, and that's a whole conversation in and of itself. But I think that a lot of people, when they look at people like you and they look at people like Alex Hormozy or these people who are very, very big names in the industry, and they look at the freedom, especially the time freedom that they have,
Mhm.
they're like, that's amazing. But oftentimes they don't recognize the team that is also in support of creating that. And so I think that that's a huge thing that I think that more entrepreneurs need to know about. Is delegation is so important, whether it is someone is delivering your groceries and mowing your lawn, or if that is hiring an independent contractor, or if that's hiring a team member full time, whatever that looks like for you. You only have so much time in a day. And if you want to scale and if you want to ultimately have time freedom, like delegating is a huge, huge, huge key piece in being able to achieve that type of lifestyle.
I
And then
appreciate that.
last,
Thank you. Yeah,
yeah,
I do want to say one more thing. There was
go
a couple
ahead.
trains that came back into the station. One thing about the hiring thing, and thank you so much for everything you just said. One thing about hiring is hire slow, fire fast. That's a great kind of slogan to keep in your mind. Is once someone isn't right, don't keep them around for 3 more months and hope things get better. Like, of course, treat people like people, give them respect, give them time to grow and evolve and change. But once you know that they're going to be let go, hire fast, or excuse me, hire slow, fire fast. But the other thing I'll say is it took years to get to this point, and the time freedom specifically is not balanced ever 50-50.
Yeah.
Like whether you look at a 3-year period or you look at my current 24-hour period, it's never 50-50. That's not balance. Balance is going to be different for everyone. Some people need 80% of their time to be work and 20% free time, and that's balance. Some people need the opposite. Some people need 80% free time and 20% work. So balance is different for everyone percentage wise. But I think most important is let's zoom all the way out and look at it over the course of 10 years. So today on my calendar, this podcast conversation is the only thing on my calendar today. And it's the only real work related task I have to do today. Like I'll check my emails and stuff like that. And so today is 95% free time. A couple weeks ago, it was not like that. A couple weeks ago, we were mid launch. And so 95% of my time was work time. A couple years ago, there was 3 years straight where I was books, ball, and business, and I had no free time. And all of my time was spent either at practice in the classroom or getting home as fast as I could because I had a training that I had set up for 30 minutes after my class ended, right? So there will be seasons. That's really what I'm getting at is there will be seasons of no balance. There will be seasons of kind of putting your nose to the grindstone. And I'm not a fan of hustle culture, but there will be seasons where you have to work your ass off and it's not going to be as fun and you're not going to have as much free time, but you're doing that in one season so that the following season can have a lot more free time and can have a lot more flexibility.
No, for sure. And I am totally in a season right now where work is a lot less. But last year, in preparation to having a kid, I was working a lot more. And so, yeah, it's definitely different. And I think, too, another thing that I'll add to that is when we look at someone else's life and we're like, oh, that's what work life balance looks like, I would ask you to take a step back and instead ask yourself, what does work life balance look like to me? And same question goes for success to you is going to look different than success to me. And also, success in different seasons is going to look different. Like, success for me this year is so different than what success looked like to me last year. And so instead of looking at other people for the answers to those questions of what work life balance should look like and how many people, you should hire and delegate to, and, how many, if you should do paid ads or not do paid ads or what success, like it's taking a step back and coming back to you and your vision at the end of the day, because of course we can learn from other people and there's so much power in learning from other people and their strategies and their perspectives. And that's how we learn and grow ultimately. But at the end of the day, what you want out of life and what your goals are and the legacy that you want to leave, how you get to that place is going to look so different than how me and Brock get there. So I love, love, love that. Thank you for adding that in. My final question to you is, if you could go back to day one of your journey and give yourself any one piece of advice, what would it be?
Yeah, I think this is such a great question. And I think, and not to toot my own horn, but I think there was quite a few things I did right early on. I did start out very sloppy and very messy. My first course was filmed on a super cheap, I was lucky to have a microphone, super cheap microphone, filmed with no lighting. It was filmed on my phone, no tripod. The phone was just propped up on some books.
I
So
love
it was sloppy and it was messy. And I'm proud of that. I did hire very early on. Within the first few months of launching that first course, I hired that assistant, Joyce, from the Philippines. And I was happy with that. I think one of the biggest things that I would go back and tell myself is specifically in regards to social media is
it.
I wish, and this is going to sound so funny for me to say, and I don't know if I've ever said this, is I wish I took social media more seriously 10 years ago or
Mm.
7 years ago, whenever I started the business.
Yeah.
Because I was posting, but especially at that time, I was mainly just posting on Snapchat because
Yeah.
that was the original business. And Snapchat is like the least evergreen content you could imagine because 24 hours later, it's gone forever.
Like
And
building your
so
business on Instagram stories alone.
literally, that's essentially what I was doing. And then, yeah, I eventually got onto Instagram and grew on Instagram, but I imagine what it would have been like if I would have started a few years earlier. And again, I was proud that I got on TikTok really early on. Like I got on TikTok in 2018, which was awesome on one hand, but on the other hand, I didn't take it seriously again. I treated it as just like a fun twerk, dance, make funny videos, make skits content. So I grew a massive following on TikTok, but none of those people care about my business. Like they were the wrong followers. And so now here I am in 2024. I think at the actually end of 2023 is when I did this. I started a new TikTok account. So now
Yeah.
I'm at like a couple thousand followers on TikTok instead of 300,000 followers on TikTok.
Yeah.
But I was like, shoot, if I would have been posting about my business stuff and doing what I actually cared about on TikTok since 2018, oh my gosh, 6 years later, I couldn't imagine where it would be at today. So I wish I would have taken it more seriously back then. And I guess what people can take from this is it's still not too late. It's not too late. And so put in the work, put in the effort, and just start showing up sloppy, start showing up messy and imperfectly. You're not going to be able to show up everywhere at once, but if you can just take it seriously, because we still are in this day and age where largely, generally speaking, social media is free. Like, you don't have to pay. I know that there are areas of Twitter and there's rumors on Instagram we're going to be paying, but we're not right now. It's still free. You can still go viral. You can still reach thousands of people. It is still possible. So don't let this opportunity go to waste, because 10, 15 years from now, it probably won't be this way. And we'll be kicking ourselves that we weren't taking it seriously back in 2024.
I love that so much. Thank you for that. Where can people find you if they want to learn more, if they want to hear more from you? I know that you also have a podcast too. Can you share a little bit more about all of that?
Yeah, of course. So the best place to get connected is myspace.com/Brock. No, Brock11 Johnson is my handle on every platform. So Instagram, Twitter, Threads, TikTok, X, Facebook, YouTube, whatever, all Brock11 Johnson. So that's the best place to get connected with me. I do co-host one podcast with my mom, which is called Build Your Tribe. I co-host another podcast, which you were on, Social Media Moneymakers. That's like an interview podcast. So yeah, there's plenty of content to go around. And if anyone shoots me a DM on Instagram, they will get a reply.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brock. I appreciate you and all the knowledge that you shared and perspectives and experience and all the behind the scenes of your business too. Because again, I'm all about that. I'm all about uncovering the things that we don't often see on social media. So I appreciate your transparency.
Thank you so much for having me.